Hello everyone, welcome to Prince Civil Services YouTube channel. I am Dheeraj Rajpurohit, and in today's session we are going to discuss the polity section of UPSC Civil Services 2021 prelims question paper. The detailed subject-wise analysis on the rest of the sections would be available on our YouTube channel, so please stay tuned. All right, let's start the discussion. So in all, there were 19 questions based on polity in this year's prelims question paper. All right, we are going to discuss one by one, taking the first question here. Consider the following statements. There are three statements given here. You can see the right to city is an agreed human right, and the UN Habitat monitors the commitment made by each country in this regard. Is this statement right? Yes, this statement is correct. If we see the options, we'll go through that. Okay, by elimination method, we get two options wrong. All right, so we are left with A and C. All right, the first statement is right. Actually, right to this city is an agreed human right. All right, it's an agreed human right, plus the UN Habitat monitors the commitment made by each country in this regard. All right, we'll take this second option here. Right to the city gives every occupant of the city the right to reclaim public spaces and public participation in the city. Is it right or wrong? Yes, it is right. The right to city, actually every occupant in the city has the right to reclaim the public places and also to participate in the city. All right, we'll see. According to this, we get the answer C right. There is no need to discuss the third option, but still we are going to read the third option. Right to the city means that the state cannot deny any public service or facility to the unauthorized colonies in the city. It is not right. The third statement is not right. The unauthorized colonies, they do not get facilities by the government. They do not get any right they do not have any right under this right to the city. All right. So our correct answer is C. Option 1, statement 1 and 2 are only correct, because we have to find only the correct statement. All right. Now we'll move on to the next question here. Reference to India, consider the following statements. The judicial custody means an accused is in the custody of the concerned magistrate, and such accused is locked up in police station, not in jail. Actually, this statement is correct till magistrate. You can see the judicial custody. There are two types of custody: judicial custody and police custody. Judicial custody, actually the custody is concerned with the magistrate. All right, and the accused is locked up in jail, not in police station. The accused is locked up in police station in police custody. All right, so the first statement is wrong. Why? Because of this part, locked up in police station, not in jail. So this statement is wrong. All right, we'll take up the second statement. During judicial custody, the police officer in charge of the case is not allowed to interrogate the suspect without the approval of the court. Yes, it is correct. Actually, in judicial custody, the police officer is not authorized to interrogate the accused until and unless he gets an permission by the concerned authority, that is the magistrate. All right, that is by the court. Okay, so this statement is correct. So our second statement is correct, first statement is wrong. By that we get to the answer B. Only 2 is correct. All right, clear? All right, so let's move on to the taking up the next question. With reference to India, consider the following statements. There are two statements here. When a prisoner makes out a sufficient case, parole cannot be denied to such prisoner because it becomes a matter of his or her right. Now the first statement is actually wrong. Why is it wrong? The statement is wrong. Actually, if a prisoner makes up a sufficient case, even then the concerned authority can actually deny the parole to the accused or to the prisoner. Why? Based on the fact that if this parole would be dangerous to the society or to the prison administration, in that case the concerned authority can deny the prisoner the parole even if he makes out a sufficient case. All right, so this statement is wrong. All right. Coming to the second statement, state governments have their own prisoners release on parole rules. Yes, it is correct. This statement is correct. Many of the states in India have their own prisoners release on parole rules, like the Rajasthan prisoners release on parole rules 1958. There are many such other states also which have their own prisoner release on parole rules. So we get the second statement correct and the first statement is wrong. So we get to the answer. First statement is wrong and the second statement is correct. So we get to the answer. Only 2 is correct. B, 2 only. All right. Now moving on to the next question. At the national level, which ministry is the nodal agency to ensure effective implementation of the Scheduled Tribes and Other Traditional Forest Dwellers Recognition of Forest Rights Act 2006, which is the nodal agency or nodal ministry at the national level? Which is it? It's the D, Ministry of Tribal Affairs. It's the Ministry of Tribal Affairs. Ministry of Tribal Affairs is the nodal agency to ensure the effective implementation of the Scheduled Tribes and Other Traditional Forest Dwellers Recognition of Forest Rights Act 2006. All right. This was a very straightforward question and I would prefer this in the easy category. Now moving on to the next statement, next question. Here's the next question. Now, a legislation which confers on the executive or administrative authority an unguided and uncontrolled discretionary power in the matter of application of law violates which one of the following articles of the Constitution of India? Legislation, any law which actually gives the executive or administrative authority an unprecedented power or we can say uncontrolled power, कुछ ज़्यादा ही power दे दिया जाए, all right, किसी law के according, किसी भी executive या administrative authority को, तो ये कौन से article को violate करेगा? Article 14, 28, 32 और 44? It is Article 14. It is Article 14, because Article 14 is right to equality. Right to equality. All right. This would actually violate the right to equality, and this is part of right to equality and exactly rule of law and procedure established by law. So it would violate actually the Article 14. What is Article 28? It is part of right to religion. All right. Article 32. Article 32 is actually, because of Article 32, we can go to the court if our fundamental rights are violated. All right. Even the Supreme Court issues the writs based on this article. All right. And Article 44. Article 44 is part of DPSP, Directive Principles of State Policy, and it is concerned with Uniform Civil Code. All right. Now let's move on to the next question. So let's discuss the next question. Now, under the Indian Constitution, concentration of wealth violates. Indian Constitution के according, concentration of wealth यानी कि पूंजी अगर एकत्रित की जा रही है किसी एक ही व्यक्ति से या group of people, if they accumulate wealth, what does it violate? Which of the following it violates? See, the right to equality, or the directive principles of state policy, or the right to freedom, or the concept of welfare. It is actually the directive principles of state policy. All right. Article 39. Article 39 of DPSP suggests that the state would state would ensure that the people or the group of people, all right, they do not concentrate wealth, all right. It would actually work against the concentration of wealth, all right. यानी कि कोई भी अगर बहुत सारी पूंजी एक साथ एकत्रित कर रहे हैं, इसका मतलब क्या है, लोगों का वेलफेयर नहीं होगा. इट इज पार्ट ऑफ डीपीएसपी. All right. Now let's move on to the next question. This was an easy question. Let's discuss the next question. What is the position of right to property in India? Legal right available to citizens only, or B, legal right available to any person, or C, fundamental right available to citizens only, or D, neither fundamental right nor legal right? The answer is legal right available to any person, all right, because legal right available to citizens only, this only has, because of this only, the first statement is wrong, all right. It is of course available to the citizens, plus we have also given this right to some few of the others like NRIs, all right, and OCI card holders. We have also given them the right to property. Also, that's why it is a legal right. Also, right to property was once a fundamental right, but by 44th Amendment Act, we have actually deleted it from the fundamental rights part, and we have added it as a constitutional. It is just a constitutional and legal right now, plus a human right. All right. Even the Supreme Court has said that the right to property is legal right, constitutional right, and human right. All right. So the answer is B. If we discuss the other part, fundamental right available to citizens, it is no more fundamental right now, neither fundamental right nor legal right. This is also wrong because it is legal right. All right. So our answer is B. Clear? Now let's discuss the next question. Now, what was the exact constitutional status of India on 26 January 1950? As you all know, on 26 January 1950, we actually enforced our constitution. हमने हमारा constitution, हमारा संविधान उस दिन लागू किया था. You all remember that it was 26th November 1949 on which we actually adopted our constitution. Yes, this date is mentioned in preamble, and then we waited for 2 months and we actually enforced our constitution on 26 January 1950. There is an historic reason for this, why we have enforced our constitution on 26 January and not on 26 November itself. It was because of Lahore session in 1929 when Jawaharlal Nehru announced that we would celebrate Independence Day on the coming 26th January. All right. And because of that historic importance, we actually enforced our constitution on 26 January 1950. All right. At the time when we enforced our constitution, at that time in the preamble or the constitutional status of India, what was it? Was it democratic republic or sovereign democratic republic or sovereign secular democratic republic? I would remove the secular because secular was added later on by the 42nd Amendment Act in 1976. Yes, so we will exclude the secular, and if we see sovereign, socialist, secular, these two words were added by the 42nd Amendment Act, plus one more word, integrity. These three words were added in the preamble, all right, by an amendment, 42nd Amendment Act 1976. All right, democratic and republic. So we got these two statements we have excluded, and if we go by these two, A and B, we'll go with B, sovereign democratic republic. All right, on 26 January 1950, our constitutional status was sovereign democratic republic. India was sovereign democratic republic. All right, now let's discuss the next question. Constitutional government means. What does constitutional government means? A representative government of a nation with federal structure. B, a government whose head enjoys nominal powers. C, a government whose head enjoys real powers. or D, a government limited by the terms of the constitution? If we see the four options, see the first option, representative government of a nation with federal structure. It is not important that it should be a federal structure. All right, a constitutional government can even be a unitary structure, can even have a unitary structure. Yes, so this statement is wrong. Then let's discuss the B, a government whose head enjoys nominal powers. No, this is also wrong, because the head of the state can enjoy more than the nominal powers even in the constitutional government. All right. Then a government whose head enjoys real powers. Now this is also wrong, because the head can even enjoy nominal powers. He can be given only nominal powers. All right, in some of the cases. So these three statements are wrong. We go with the fourth statement, a government limited by the terms of the constitution. Yes, this is the correct definition, because the constitution actually limits the power of the government. What the government can do, all right, what are the powers and duties of the government are enshrined in the constitution. All right, this is the work of the constitution. So constitution गवर्नमेंट के पावर्स क्या करते हैं, लिमिट कर लेते हैं, है ना, कि कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन की क्या ड्यूटीज होगी, क्या पावर्स होगी, ये सब कुछ कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में लिखा हुआ है. ऑलराइट, सो आवर आंसर इज डी. नाउ लेट्स डिस्कस द नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन. Consider the following statements in respect of Bharat Ratna and Padma Awards. There are three statements here. Let's discuss them one by one. Bharat Ratna and Padma Awards are titles under the Article 18, Clause 1 of the Constitution of India. Actually, they are not titles. They are not titles, because even Supreme Court has said in many of the instances, in many of the cases, the Supreme Court has affirmed that the Bharat Ratna and Padma Awards do not constitute as titles under the Article 18 of the Constitution of India. Actually, Article 18 prohibits the titles. All right. So that's why many a times it has been the cases have come in front of the Supreme Court, and every time Supreme Court has affirmed that the Bharat Ratna and Padma Awards do not constitute as titles under the Article 18. All right. So this statement is wrong. All right. Padma Awards, which were instituted in the year 1952, were suspended only once. Now this statement is also wrong, because the Padma Awards were not suspended only once, they were suspended twice. One in 1977 to 80, and the next was 1992 to 1995. All right. So it was actually not once but twice they were suspended. All right. So this statement is also wrong. We'll go with the third statement. The number of Bharat Ratna awards is restricted to a maximum of 5 in a particular year. This statement is also wrong, because it is actually 3. The maximum or the Bharat Ratna awards have been restricted to 3 in a 3 as a maximum in a particular year. So only 3 Bharat Ratna awards can be conferred in a particular year, not 5. All right. So all the 3 statements are incorrect, and we have to find the incorrect statements. You can see which of the above statements are not correct. All of the 3 are not correct. So our answer would be D, 1, 2 and 3. Okay. So let's discuss the next question. Now, we adopted parliamentary democracy based on the British model. But how does our model differ from that model? So, we actually adopted the parliamentary democracy based on the British model, but how does it differ? How does the both model differ? All right. So, we have got 2 options here. First, as regards legislation, the British Parliament is supreme or sovereign, but in India, the power of the Parliament to legislate is limited. Is it correct? Yes, it is correct. Okay, it is correct, because British Parliament is supreme or sovereign. All right, it can amend the constitution. It has its constitutional power or the constituent power to amend the constitution are not limited, all right. But in case of India, the parliament's power to legislate or to amend the constitution are limited, all right. We have a basic structure, a concept of basic structure in India. Basic structure of constitution. In Keshwanand Bharti case in 1973, Supreme Court came up with the basic structure of the constitution philosophy. What does this say? That the constitution has some basic elements which cannot be altered or amended by the parliament. All right. So this is true. All right. The first statement is correct. This is the difference between Indian and British parliament. The second statement, in India, matters related to the constitutionality of the amendment of an act of the parliament are referred to the constitution bench by the Supreme Court. Yes, yes it is. In India, the matters related to constitutionality of the amendment of an act of the parliament, all right. If any act of the parliament, if constitution is amended, all right, if the constitution is amended and there is a question on the constitutionality of that amendment act, then the Supreme Court refers that to the constitution bench, all right. But such process is not there in British parliament, all right. British parliament is supreme or sovereign. It can change the constitution, amend the constitution, all right, and there is no one to question it, all right. So actually British parliament is associated with the parliament supremacy or sovereignty, all right. But we have actually not adopted that because of checks and balances, all right. So is it clear? The second statement is also correct. It differs from the British parliament, all right. So our answer would be, we have to find the correct answer. So our answer would be C, both 1 and 2. Both 1 and 2 statement are correct, all right. Now let's discuss the next question. With reference to union government, consider the following statements. There are two statements here and we have to find the correct statement. The first statement, N. Gopalaswamy Iyengar committee suggested that a minister and a secretary be designated solely for pursuing the subject of administrative reform and promoting it. N. Gopalaswamy Iyengar committee, 1949, all right. It came up with the idea that a ministry should be designated through a minister and a secretariat should be designated by a secretary, all right. But he never suggested that a minister and a secretary be designed solely. Actually, this word, this is the key word here, all right. This means that only the minister and the secretary are designated only. All right, solely means only the minister and secretary are designated for pursuing the subject of administrative reforms. All right, it was not suggested by the committee. So this is a wrong statement. We'll come up with the second statement. In 1970, the Department of Personnel was constituted on the recommendation of the Administrative Reforms Commission 1966, and this was placed under the Prime Minister's charge. Actually, in 1970, it is correct that Department of Personnel was constituted, all right, and it was constituted on the recommendation of Administrative Reforms Commission of 1966. But what is wrong here is it was not placed under the Prime Minister's charge at that time. It was actually placed under the Prime Minister's charge in 1985. Until then, it was actually under the Cabinet Secretariat, all right. So because of this part, it is wrong. This statement is wrong, all right. So we have to find the correct statement. So neither of the statement is correct. So our answer would be D, neither 1 nor 2. Let's discuss the next question. All right, so right to privacy is protected under which article of the Constitution of India? Article 15, 19, 21 or 29? It is a simple question. Answer is Article 21. Supreme Court in Puttaswamy, Justice Puttaswamy versus Union of India case has reaffirmed in 2019 that the right to privacy is part of the fundamental right under Article 21. All right, under Article 21, that is right to life. Right to life. Okay, this is a simple question. Even in 2017, Justice Puttaswamy versus Union of India case. In 2017, the judgment came out in 2017. It was a landmark judgment, all right, and it is a very important case. All right, let's move on to the next question. Consider the following statements. In India, there is no law restricting the candidates from contesting in one Lok Sabha election from 3 constituencies. There are actually 3 statements and we have to find the correct statement. Hai na? Correct statement. So, the first statement, in India, there is no law restricting the candidates from contesting in one Lok Sabha election from 3 constituencies. Actually, this statement is wrong. Because under section 33 of RPA, Representation of People's Act, it is actually restricted to 2 constituencies, not 3, 2. All right. So any candidate can contest from 2 constituencies simultaneously. All right. In a general election to the Lok Sabha, a candidate can contest election from maximum 2 constituencies. Actually, this was changed in 1996. It was amended in 1996. It was changed. Before that, a candidate can actually contest more than 2. Can contest election from more than 2 constituencies. But now, after 1976, it has been restricted to 2. All right. So this first statement is wrong. If we go by elimination method, then A and C are gone. We are only left with B and D. So second statement is automatically correct. All right. This is how you have to do in the exam. All right. We are discussing, that's why we are discussing all the statements. But in the exam, practically you have to do that. Okay, first statement is wrong. We go by elimination method. We are left with 2. So by that, now you can see that second option is already correct. All right. We don't have to discuss the second option. We come up on the third option. All right. As per the existing rules, if a candidate contest in one Lok Sabha election from many constituencies, his or her party should bear the cost of by-elections to the constituencies vacated by him or her in the event of him or her winning in all the constituencies. अगर वो कैंडिडेट सारे जितने भी कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसी से इलेक्शन लड़ रहा है, अगर वो जीत जाता है सारे कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसी से, तो यहाँ कहा जा रहा है कि वो या उसकी पार्टी बाई इलेक्शन का खर्चा उठाएंगे, यानी कि उसके बाद एक सीट खाली रहेगी क्योंकि एक ही सीट ले पाएंगे वो, तो नेक्स्ट दैट वेकेंट सीट दैट वुड बी अ बाई इलेक्शन, उसके लिए बाई इलेक्शन होगा, तो उस बाई इलेक्शन के लिए उन्हें पूरा खर्चा उठाना होगा. दिस स्टेटमेंट इज एक्चुअली रॉन्ग. दिस स्टेटमेंट इज रॉन्ग. व्हाई इज इट रॉन्ग? बिकॉज उन्हें खर्चा नहीं उठाना होता, ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं है आरपीए में, रिप्रेजेंटेशन ऑफ पीपल्स एक्ट में. रिप्रेजेंटेशन ऑफ पीपल्स एक्ट में क्या दिया है? सिर्फ ये दिया है कि जहां से वो कंटेस्ट कर रहे हैं, अगर समझ लो वो एक से ज्यादा सीट से कंटेस्ट कर रहे हैं, कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसी से कंटेस्ट कर रहे हैं इलेक्शन, देन ही हैव टू फाइल द एक्सपेंसेस. उन्हें एक्सपेंसेस शो करने पड़ेंगे कि मेरा इलेक्शन एक्सपेंस कितना हुआ है. आपको ये पता होगा रिप्रेजेंटेशन ऑफ पीपल्स एक्ट के अंडर सारे जितने भी कैंडिडेट्स हैं उन्हें अपना इलेक्शन एक्सपेंस शो करना पड़ता है. उन्हें अपना इलेक्शन एक्सपेंस दिखाना पड़ता है कि हमारा कितना एक्सपेंस हुआ है, तो वो एक्सपेंस दिखाना पड़ेगा उन्हें सारे अलग अलग तरीके से, एक साथ नहीं दिखा सकते। अलग अलग अगर दो जगह से अगर अलग अलग जगह से उन्होंने कंटेस्ट किया है तो दोनों का अलग अलग एक्सपेंस उन्हें शो करना होगा, दैट इज द रूल। बट उन्हें बाई इलेक्शन का खर्चा नहीं उठाना है, सो दिस इज ऑल्सो रॉन्ग। सो दीज टू स्टेटमेंट्स 1 and 3, these are wrong, so we come up with the answer B, 2 only. Now let's see the 2. In 1991 Lok Sabha election, Shri Devi Lal contested from the 3 Lok Sabha constituencies, but we don't have to discuss on this, all right, it is a fact, and plus हमारे elimination method से ये automatically हमें क्या पता चला है कि ये correct है, right? Now let's discuss the next question. Which one of the following in Indian polity is an essential feature that indicates that it is a federal in character? Federal in character. All right. 4 options are there. The independence of judiciary is safeguarded. B. The union legislature has elected representatives from constituent units. C. The union cabinet can have elected representatives from regional parties. D. The fundamental rights are enforceable by courts of law. So the answer is actually A. The federal character of Indian Constitution is shown by the independence of judiciary. If the judiciary is independent, that the federal character is ensured. All right, because judiciary, see, the Supreme Court, High Court, the judiciary actually enforces both the laws, the state laws and the union laws. It interprets both the laws. So if there is a dispute between the union and the state, they would go to the Supreme Court. All right, so the judiciary should be independent to ensure that the character of the Indian Constitution or the character of the Indian polity remains federal. All right, so A is the answer. Rest of the options are actually not related to the federal character. All right, which one of the following best defines the term state? We have 4 options. Let's see one by one. We have to define state. All right, Rajya. यहाँ पे राज्य या state, it doesn't mean the states of India like Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh. It doesn't mean that. All right, it means the legal term state. All right, even the term state has been defined in Article 12. All right. Now a community of persons permanently occupying a definite territory, independent of external control and possessing an organized government. Actually, what is wrong with the first definition is external control. All right, a community of persons permanently occupying a definite territory, it's okay. Independent of external control, but it can be dependent on the external control. There can be some control from external bodies or external some other agency. All right, and possessing an organized government. So it is not the correct or the exact definition. Now let's move on to the second. A politically organized people of a definite territory and possessing an authority to govern them, maintain law and order, protect their natural rights and safeguard their means of sustenance. Now it seems to be correct. So we'll go with this, but we'll also read the other statements. Don't ever do this. Don't stop at one statement. You should read all these statements because there can be a better definition of state. All right. So let's see a number of persons who have been living in a definite territory for a very long time with their own culture, tradition, and government. No, it doesn't define that much. A number of people and living in a definite territory for a very long time. It doesn't define exactly. So we'll exclude this. Coming to the D option, a society permanently living in a definite territory with a central authority and executive responsible to the central authority and an independent judiciary. Now it seems a very probable, but you see what is wrong with this definition? Actually, executive responsible to the central authority. It is not necessary. Actually, It defines India, the Indian state, but we have not given here anything like Indian state or something. Executive responsible to the central authority. The executive can be independent as well. All right. And an independent judiciary. All right. There is a central authority plus a central authority. So these terms are actually vague. All right. That's why we'll exclude this definition also. We'll go with the B option. A politically organized people of a definite territory and possessing an authority to govern them. They have not said any central authority. They have not defined it. An authority to govern them. Yes, it is correct. Maintain law and order. Yes. Protect their natural rights and safeguard their means of sustenance. It is a wholesome definition of state. All right. These are not the wholesome definitions. So we'll go with the B option. All right. So the B option. Now let's discuss the next question. With reference to Indian judiciary, consider the following statements. There are two statements here. Any retired judge of the Supreme Court of India can be called back to sit and act as a Supreme Court judge by the Chief Justice of India with prior permission of the President of India. Yes, it can be done. We have to find the correct statement. So this is a correct statement. Actually, a retired judge of a Supreme Court can be called back. After his retirement, he can be called back. All right. But for that, and who can do this? Chief Justice of India. At Supreme Court, Chief Justice of India can call back a retired judge to actually serve. If for example, the quorum is not maintained in the Supreme Court. Quorum means the minimum number of judges. If they are very less of few and the workload is more, then the Chief Justice of India can call the retired judge, all right, to work for a temporary basis, all right, to work as a judge in Supreme Court. But he can do this only on the condition that he has sought the permission of President of India plus the concerned retired judge. He has to find his he also has to ask the retired judge, all right, and plus he has to sought the permission of the President of India. Then he can appoint an retired judge to act as the judge of a Supreme Court. Clear? So this statement is correct. Second statement, a High Court in India has the power to review its own judgment as the Supreme Court does. Supreme Court is the court of record. Court of record. And because it is a court of record, it can actually change or review its own decision. We have seen that in many cases. Yes, all right. In Keshwanand Bharti case, the Supreme Court actually changed its own judgment. All right. In many of the cases, Supreme Court has done that, and that actually shows the flexibility and the changing nature of time. Because with the time, our requirements or the situations change. For that, to accommodate that, it has to sometimes review its own judgment. All right, Supreme Court does it. Also, the High Court of India, it also has the power because it is also a court of record. And under Article, Supreme Court does this under Article 32 and High Court does this under Article 226. All right. So High Court is also a court of record and it can review its own judgment. That means if High Court has given a judgment in a particular year, in the coming years, maybe if the High Court comes across a similar case, it can actually review its previous judgment. All right. So this is also correct. This is also correct. Our correct option would be C, both 1 and 2. All right. Now let's discuss the next question. With reference to India, consider the following statements. We have got 3 statements here and we have to find the correct statement. All right. The first, there is only one citizenship and one domicile. Yes. Yes. India only gives one citizenship and one domicile. So yes, it is correct. First statement is correct. If we go by the first statement is correct, then two options are eliminated. B and D are eliminated. We are only left with A and C. One only and 1 and 3. So second statement is actually incorrect by the elimination. But still we'll see a citizen by birth only can become the head of the state. Who is the head of the state of India? It's the president. So first you should know this. And after that, the president in India, the president can be a citizen by birth or even a natural citizen, naturalized citizen. All right. So naturalized citizen means he has acquired the citizenship. All right. He is not a citizen by birth. All right. So in that case, in India, a president can be a citizen by birth as well as a natural citizen. Unlike USA, in USA, the president should be a citizen by birth and not a natural citizen. All right. But in India, he can be by birth as well as a natural citizen. All right. So this statement is actually wrong. Second statement. All right. A foreigner once granted the citizenship cannot be deprived of it under any circumstance. Under any circumstances. Is it correct? No, this is wrong. Also, it seems wrong, right? Because once you grant citizenship to a foreigner, there are many cases. If, for example, he gets sentence of 2 or more years, all right, if he is accused and also he gets a sentence for that crime, then in that case his or her citizenship would be revoked. All right. So there are many cases or many circumstances under which a foreigner's citizenship can be revoked. All right. So this statement is wrong. So we are left with only one. So that's why A, one only. The answer is one only. All right. Let's move on to the next question. Which one of the following factors constitute the best safeguard of liberty in a liberal democracy? So liberty is protected in a liberal democracy by whom? A committed judiciary or a centralization of powers or elected government or separation of powers. All right. Seeing at the question, we can see that the answer would be A, a committed judiciary, because the liberty is safeguarded by the committed judiciary. All right. Not centralization of power, elected government or separation of power. All right. A committed judiciary can actually protect the liberty in a liberal democracy. All right. So the answer is A, a committed judiciary. So here we'll end this session. All the questions have been discussed. All right. So I hope this video was informative for you all. आप सबको अच्छा लगा होगा. अगर अच्छा लगा है, then don't forget to like, subscribe, and don't forget to click the bell icon so that you get the notifications for the upcoming videos. We are going to upload all the subject-wise detailed analysis of the prelims question paper. So stay tuned and please subscribe the channel. All right. On this note, I'll end the session. Thank you for watching.